This is Donna Gates with Body Ecology Living. Thank you for joining us today. My guest today is a digestive health expert and a long time friend, Brenda Watson. And Brenda's been on the scene like me for over 20 years, and we've both been all about digestion, and she just right there in the forefront all the time, just doing amazing things. She's had several PBS specials already. She's had a New York Times bestseller, the Fiber 35 diet, and she's just one of the most amazing people I know. I've watched her for years go and be there for people. She's just shows up anywhere she can to help people have a better life. So when she told me that she was writing her new book called The Skinny Gut Diet, I was really excited because there's a lot of interesting research lately on what's happening in the gut and why we have the problem of obesity today. So that's what we're going to dig into. And so I'd like to welcome my guest, Brenda Watson.
Thank you, Donna. So nice to talk to you. And yes, we've been friends and on the same path for over 20 years. And, it's really funny when I've done some of these podcasts recently or, whatever, interviews with people. And I know you do the same thing where they, the gut thing now is sort of popular. And I started thinking, wow, I did my first, I think, class on leaky gut in 1995.
Yeah,
and,
I know.
And you too. And we're just like, oh, I mean, it's so, to us, I know it must seem to you, like it seems to me sometimes is like, wow, I'm excited that it's now more, I guess you could say, awareness and popular and all that. But it's been a long road. And when we first started, both you and I, we were weird.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. And of course, we also told people that they need to go through a period of time of therapy where they clean out their gut so that they can restore a healthy inner ecosystem. And imagine how Bernard Jensen must think, because a long time ago, he was telling people about the gut. And it was just a tiny group of people. It got a little more popular when we came along, but now it is so hot. I think it's the hottest thing out there. And scientists all over the world are all in agreement that you got to have a healthy gut. And so when the first research started showing up about the connection between gut and obesity, that was quite a surprise, wasn't it? And I mean, can you tell everybody the beginning of that research and how it all came about?
Well, as you know, what's kind of, I think, started a lot of it was when the National Institutes of Health started to fund scientists and universities to study the human microbiome. I mean, that Don, as well as I do, when money starts going to universities and scientists and to study something, then they become excited and they have money for research. The first research that started was in 2004 with Dr. Jeffrey Gordon at the St. Louis University, University of St. Louis, and he's the first one that implanted the bacteria from overweight mice into lean mice and saw that even though they ate the same diet, that the lean mice became obese. And so that was kind of the beginning of the weight kind of connection there was in 2004. Now that's 10 years ago, so that's a long time. And then, as you know, the evolution of probiotics and gut health started moving along. And then I think, like I said, earlier in looking at the book, started, investigating and talking to some of these researchers who were doing probiotics or gut bacteria in relationship to mood and, depression, anxiety, and all of these other things are now studying. But the weight thing came about in mice, of course. And then eventually, of course, once something starts in animal studies, they take it to human studies. And what first, I guess, hit me about it was when I went in July of 2013. My husband Stan enticed me. I did not want to go to the New York Academy of the Sciences to a symposium on probiotics in which microbiologists from all over the world were presenting papers. And I'm like, I don't really want to go because I'm not a microbiologist, and it's really complicated when they present. You know that, Donna.
And you do travel constantly, so why do you want to go to something that
I didn't really want to go, but you know what? I did go, and so what I gleaned out of that conference was a couple of really good presentations on one thing was the relationship between antibiotic overusage and obesity epidemic in the United States, which was really clear when you looked at the two different maps of the amount of antibiotics prescribed in a state, and then you looked at the obesity in that state, and they matched exactly. That was unbelievable to me. And then a couple of presentations in which they had looked at the microflora, microbiota in the gut and in weight loss in humans. So as I left that symposium in July, I thought, well, the research, some of the research is there, and the research changes all the time, and there's not a day that goes by that I don't have someone say, well, there's been a study that says this didn't work. So, that there isn't, a correlation between Bacteroidetes and Firmicutes, which I call the Bacteroidetes, the B. skinny bacteria, and the Firmicutes, the fat bacteria, and that makes it simple for people to understand.
Yeah.
But when I came back in July of 13, and because I still do a lot of stool testing through Metametrics and Genova, I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to take a group of people, 10 people or 15 people, whoever I could kind of gather around, who were overweight, needed to lose at least over 20 pounds, do a baseline stool test on them, see where their adiposity bacteria was, the fat bacteria and the B. skinny bacteria. Plus, as you well know, a Metametrics test gives a lot of other information. It gives digestion, inflammation, where's their good bacteria like lactobacillus and bifidobacteria. So you get the whole good overview of that person. And so if I took that group of people, gave them a baseline test, and then put them on a good diet, took sugar out of the diet, as simple carbs out of the diet, taught them how to eat over a period of time, and then retested them every 6 weeks, would it show that, first of all, that their B. skinny to fat bacteria was out of ratio, number one, on a baseline, but would it show that after 6 weeks of a good diet, taking sugar out of the diet, adding in some extra fiber, adding in some probiotics, could that change the microflora of the gut? And would they lose weight? I mean, that was the key. I mean, would they lose weight? So that's where I started from. And I took a group, I had about 12 people. And I will tell you that I had some very challenging people because it wasn't people within, I didn't go to the health food store and get the people. So it was people some who had an idea of a healthy lifestyle, but it was also people who went through a drive-through 3 times a day and had they didn't know what kale was or quinoa. So the education.
Those are also going to be your people who struggle most with weight problem.
Oh, yeah. And I wanted to teach them a lot, Donna, of the same teachings that you teach. I wanted to teach them not only, this is not just about taking a probiotic or fiber. I wanted them to understand fermented foods. I wanted them to understand, looking at food differently, looking at food from, I think when you live a lifestyle of everything has to be convenient and you're going through a drive-through, it's such a change in the awareness of an individual to start seeing all the other options that are out there. So I met with this group every single week, and every single week we had a different class. I taught them, first of all, keeping getting the sugar out. And I didn't want them to crave sugar, Donna, because that's when they start craving sugar, that can sabotage their program. So I started working with them, making sure they had good quality protein, that they were eating enough vegetables every day. I taught a class on fermenting foods and actually came to your house and you did a little video with me that I'll, have out on a soon on a fermentation class and showing people, because you've been doing this for years.
That was fun. Yeah, you had a great film crew that day. I remember that very well. That was a great day.
And showing people how simple it is. I mean, this is not hard. And so the eating of the fermented foods was very important. And I want to clarify, kefir and good quality yogurt without sugar in it is one form of fermented foods. But the form that I really wanted to I guess, imprint on their brain was eating fermented vegetables, because that just added, Donna, to that vegetable content every day.
Well, you're also getting fiber as well as bacteria, and you're getting food for them, and so many things are coming. I have also decided after years of teaching people about fermented foods that if you ask me to rate them and which are the most important, I would put the cultured vegetables at the top of the list. They provide so much to the gut, and I would also put the fermented coconut water in there too, because it's such a powerful cleanser. We've had such great results with both of those with the autistic kids. As you know, we've both spoken at Autism One and other places like that too. So we know the huge importance of introducing this early in life to children to prevent or reverse, early signs of autism.
I think, Donna, we have a little bit of ways to go with getting the average, or, getting people to know the simplicity of fermenting vegetables and how simple it is. I just still don't think we're there yet. I think it's coming. I really think the next shift, like we've seen paleo and, all these movements happen in the last years that have been pretty successful. But I really think the new movement will be fermented foods in the form of vegetables. And of course, you've been a pioneer in that movement. And I think that if we can, impact people on how simple it is,
Yeah, it is simple.
Yeah.
And also, once you do it, if you take a Sunday afternoon and get a friend or two and make it fun, you've got them for months. I mean, they'll last. I like for people to eat them up in 6 weeks or 2 months or something, but you don't have to make them every day or every week. They stay for a while. But I 100% agree with you on that. That's been my vision all along, is to see them everywhere in schools, for example. But one of the things that interesting I've always thought about our path together, our friendship for over all these 20 years, and the different directions we've gone, so that we can, between the two of us, we've made a very strong statement out in the world. And we both started off, with for me, weight really wasn't a problem for some reason. I've had my genes done, and I actually should be obese, but I'm not. But the thing that, I took all those antibiotics for every day practically. I took one from the age of 15 to the age of 30 something. And except for if I was pregnant or nursing, I didn't. But otherwise, my skin would break out because, I had, unknowingly, that was a side effect of, or a symptom of having candidiasis. Then I met Dr. Crook. We both met him, and we learned about candidiasis and all. But you also had a lot of antibiotics, and probably this is the two things that put us on this path, don't you think? And so antibiotics. Would you say that the obesity epidemic is coming just from antibiotic use, or antibiotic
no,
use
I don't think. I don't think it's coming just from that. I think that is a big factor. In my antibiotic use started very, very early in life. As a child, I don't know. My mother thought that I never wanted. It sounds weird. I never wanted to drink milk after I was breastfed. So my mother had this idea that I was really unhealthy. So every time I stubbed my toe, I got antibiotics. And so I can remember in elementary school in 5th and 6th grade being sent to the hospital for migraine headaches. I mean, that's when it started for me. So I think, yes, antibiotics played a huge part in this issue of disrupting the flora of the digestive tract. And I think that for me, I think for you, I didn't know that. I had no idea about that. I was well into my 30s before I ever started anything natural.
Well, babies today, because they are automatically testing every woman when she's pregnant for group B strep, and a lot of women, because they don't have a lot of healthy bacteria in their vagina, it'll show up that there is a group B strep in there, and it's not pathogenic at that point. It's a potential pathogen, but certainly there are others in there that are potentially pathogenic too. Nevertheless, they start the mother, the minute she goes into labor, on IV antibiotics. So both she and the baby are slammed with a huge amount of antibiotics, the baby since the beginning of life. So I know it's playing a role, and then what comes from that is candida, in autism even.
Yes,
So,
absolutely. And the other thing, Donna, if you look at, okay, so let's look the other thing that affects the footprint, and that's the cesarean births. And if you look at cesarean birth in the U.S., it's 32%. 32% of the births are cesarean. So 33% of the population is obese. I mean, if you look and start correlating some of these things, now all cesarean births are not absolutely necessary. You know that. Some of them,
oh no,
some of
absolutely.
them. But and if you look in,
Elective.
yeah, they're elective. And if you look in Europe, and I don't know, don't quote me on this, but it's either France or Italy, it's 80%
The
cesarean
80%.
birth.
Oh
Cesarean birth.
no, you're kidding.
When I was doing the research for the book, I was shocked.
That
But
is.
still, that's part of what's affecting this microbial footprint. And look at it, Donna, what happens with cesarean. The mother automatically goes on antibiotics. The baby doesn't make the microbial footprint. Their bacteria comes from the mother's skin, from the environment in the hospital, and they never really gather that good digestive. And, I think, Donna, too, what you hit on is true. I think we typically think that when a child goes through the birth canal that, yes, it's bathed in the good bacteria for the digestive tract and colonizes, but there's so many women out there, even having a traditional birth, Donna, that aren't healthy in their vaginal tract.
Well, no, absolutely. I even heard a study long ago. I think it was Cornell or one of the universities in New York, that's somewhere that starts with a C. They took 1,000 women, young girls in college, and they were shocked to learn when they did a little swab of their vaginal tissue and all that 80% of them had a really wrong. They actually had an infection, but what shocked them most of all was the girls didn't know they did. So now those girls are going to go on and get pregnant. I think too that one of my absolutely top of the list favorite supplements that I have been telling so many people about in the last year or so is Flora Baby, because
Yes.
that's your product, Renew Life Flora Baby. And I know to me, it's not for babies. So constantly people come up to me. It just happened last week, and I was at the Bulletproof Exec Conference speaking, and out in the hall, a bunch of people were asking me questions. And this one young woman at the very end, after everyone left, was literally in tears. I felt so badly for her. She had done everything she could. And you know what I had her do? As I told her to start all over again, like as if she were a brand new baby, and take some Flora Baby, a big teaspoon of it, and put it in a bottle of water, and drink that all day long, and stop eating. And I even suggested that she get some raw goat milk kefir. Well, get goat milk kefir. She was traveling. She was from another country. And dilute that with a product we make called Antibiotics, and put those two together and literally fast on that for 1, 2, or 3 days. Then she had to get on a plane on Tuesday, and she, obviously couldn't take anything with her, but to take some Antibiotics and the Flora Baby with her in her checked bag so she could keep keeping those in their diet. But I've just got this new thing I'm playing around with now. It seems to be working very well, where I'm literally copying nature. That's what nature does. So what's in Flora Baby, and here's the other thing I want to throw in that have you comment on is that it absolutely shocks me that when you go to the health food store right out here in Savvy, California, all the baby foods are fruit, and that means they have a lot of sugar, and that's playing a factor too. So healthy isn't necessarily healthy. So can you comment on this is not just about babies, folks. I know you're thinking, well, this isn't about me. I'm not going to have a baby. This is about you.
Yes, Flora Baby is a powdered probiotic, of course, that we developed for infants, but a lot of the strains that are in the Flora Baby are bifido and lacto, which are also in adults. Now, the wonderful thing about Flora Baby, which we knew nothing about, was they did a study at the hospital in Montreal with Flora Baby and preemies, and how they even found new Flora Baby. We have no idea. We did nothing to support it. You know what I mean? But the study came out and found that these preemie babies that generally developed a certain condition did not develop it if they were on Flora Baby. Now, it is a powder And it's really it's each culture, each serving culture is about 4 billion cultures, but it contains 5 strains, and it's got the bifido infantis in us now infantis in it. Originally, Donna, years and years ago, we had a probiotic with bifido infantis in it, and the stores would always say, well, why do you put bifido infantis in that product? Because that particular strain goes away when you become an adult. Well, then later on down the road, years later, they find out it's really good for IBS. So you end up, and we tend to want to take this microflora and make well, this happens and this happens and this happens, but it's an ever-changing environment, as you know, and the Flora Baby is a wonderful product because you can put it in, a liquid water actually would be best, and it doesn't have a bad taste. Actually, that's what my grandchildren drink all day long.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter,
fantastic.
my daughter just puts it. I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and they just put it in their water in their little sippy cups, and that's what they drink all day long.
Wow.
So it's a wonderful formula, and for a mother who is breastfeeding, to put that on the breast area for the baby, especially if that's been a cesarean birth, is very important. But it was really nice to see a hospital do a study on this and us know nothing about it. And it become very positive.
Well, when you're talking about the Bacteroidetes, the good guys and the Firmicutes, the fat ones.
Right.
People, they go brain dead when you say words like that. Well,
I know.
What? Give me an example. Bifidus is an example of one of the good guys, one of the B guys.
Yep.
So,
the Be Skinny. Bifidus is good. And we have more bifidobacteria in our digestive tract than we do lacto. 10 times more, actually, because it's the main friendly bacteria for the colon. And bifido, and what people maybe don't understand is, like I talk about the Bacteroidetes or the Be Skinny bacteria and the fat bacteria, but it's all about balance. And bifido and lacto help balance the Be Skinny and the fat bacteria as well as anything else. So when you're trying to balance it, when I was working with these people and I began, so let's say I did a baseline test on them, Donna, and they had a high level of fat bacteria, a low level of the Be Skinny bacteria, and their adiposity bacteria. But when you looked up at their bifido and lacto, they were very low in those also. You see what I mean? Mm-hmm. So even if you upped and got their lacto and bifido higher due to eating fermented foods or taking a probiotic, then that began to balance that adiposity bacteria.
Mm. Yeah, and besides just the gut needing the bifidus, it's also the primary important bacteria that needs to be in the birth canal when a woman is going to have the baby and the baby passes through. And if that doesn't happen because she does have a C-section, you can give it to the baby as soon as they're born.
Absolutely.
There's this belief like, well, they just get milk, don't they? And I say, no, they can have. We give our babies dropperfuls of the coconut kefir right after they're born, literally right after the same day, and the same thing with the Flora Baby. So.
And using the coconut kefir, so explain to people kind of how easy it is to ferment coconut kefir.
Well, they don't even have to do that anymore. I mean, out here, there's a couple of companies that you can just go right in the health food stores and buy young coconut kefir. And then my favorite product is called cocoa kefir, which you can order directly online. And I'm so busy these days that I only make myself sometimes, and then I do because I like to. But then I'll order it from Cocoa Kefir. So I have a standing order every month and have 12 bottles come from them. But they are all over, many. They're everywhere, I think, but California. So you can buy it, but it's so easy to take a starter, put it in coconut water. You want fresh coconut water from Thailand, and it should be warmed ever so slightly. Then you put the packet of bacteria in there. For people that are using kefir grains, I could use that too.
You have a starter kit that you use, right?
I've had
That's
it
yours. Yeah, for
since the
years.
beginning of time, I think, because I was the one who created this, and I started the whole awareness of fermented foods. It's hard to believe, but they're everywhere, but not in the U.S. We had yogurt, only yogurt. But I'd really like to ask your take on dairy at this point in your journey and with all the education you've had. Do you think dairy is good for you?
I think what I have found is what I mostly recommend for people was the fermented dairy. So kefir and the yogurts. In terms of milk and things like that, no. I don't consider those healthy foods. There are some cheeses, as you know, Donna, that are fermented that probably are pretty good for us. But dairy as a whole, there's a lot of people sensitive to it, as you know, and especially if they've got leaky gut. So what I pretty much recommended, and that's why I was saying I was trying to shift people more to the fermented vegetables. Like, for
Away
example,
from dairy, especially in the beginning.
Yeah, in the beginning. I have a son-in-law. Yeah, I have a son-in-law who we did a little thing with the what do you call them? The grains, the kefir grains, and tell folks they're not grains. They're not grains.
No.
They're kefir little globule things.
They look like little pieces of cauliflower.
Cauliflower, right? And when he did a sensitivity test, of course, showed very high sensitivity to dairy. And he said, I never realized that when you looked at kefir, it was 99% lactose free. But I think that my recommendation has been to people is more fermented, not milk and all the processed cheeses. No.
I agree with you. And I've been working now lately, once I got into autism, the next sort of step was lots of women started calling me to help them with their babies when they were pregnant, so they didn't have an autistic child. And I've actually come to the conclusion that fermented dairy is an excellent food during pregnancy. But I've also, I've said for years, every food has a front and back to it. So there'll be good things about it, but you can find some things that are not going to work. And a couple of things that I realized too about, for me, I love the taste of even milk kefir, which I was teaching people to make, but I couldn't have it myself. Then when I had my genes tested, because for the last 2 years I've been hot and heavy into nutritional genomics and studying people's genes and food and how it hits expresses the genes. And anyway, what I discovered is that I do not have a problem with lactose. Like do not have the gene that a few people.
I don't either.
I
tested myself too. I don't have it.
So we can both. Lactose isn't a problem, but the reason I couldn't do the dairy was the fat. I have the genes that don't let me have saturated fat. So right now, there's so much misunderstanding out there. There's people, just slamming dairy, and so some people actually thrive on it. Fermented is definitely better. And then there's a lot of people saying, oh, eat all the butter, fat, and cream. For somebody with my genes, that's devastating. So if I go with low fat, so now, I get my own raw goat milk. I take the little fat that goes up to the top off and give it to my little dog who loves it. And then I ferment it so it doesn't have as much fat in it, and it's raw and it's fermented. Then my body thrives on it and it builds muscle. So that's one of the positive things that milk can do is build muscle. And then I enrich it with Flora baby.
I don't know what it is with me, but even though I didn't test the genes for sensitivity, I don't love. I don't know why. I don't like the smell of dairy, and it's just I don't know what it was. It was, like I said earlier, my mom thought that I was the strangest weird thing on the planet as a young child, because the minute I smelled milk, I wanted to really throw up. I just never have loved it. Now, I'll eat fermented yogurt sometimes, but, I don't love it. We've been making some kefir ice cream with stevia and things like that, which is really tasty, and I've actually enjoyed. And, of course, when you're working with people with weight loss and losing weight, you've got to give them some treats. We wanted to take and I have a lady here that works with me. She's been so wonderful at making this kefir ice cream with stevia. And and lemon, like a lemon one, a cherry one, and putting a little bit, sometimes a dark chocolate in it. It's delicious. It really is.
Oh, I can
But I
imagine.
don't know what it is about me, but I've never, I don't know why, and I don't have a problem with it, but I couldn't drink a glass of milk or a glass of goat milk if had a gun to my head, probably. I don't
Well,
know why.
yeah. Well, I think you should always trust your intuition. And I always wanted to have it, and now that I can, I really actually. But I don't drink. I over in Russia where they drink a lot of it in Poland, they usually dilute it with water, and I dilute mine with coconut kefir or cocobiotic or energy biotics. I don't drink it straight, and it's perfect for my body now. But so getting back to the book, or bacteria in the gut anyway, antibiotics we know are really bad, and they've definitely contributed to the obesity problem as well as many other problems, and candida, of course. What else is in there killing the bacteria and throwing off the balance, as you mentioned, because it is about balance?
Okay, the other things are, of course, the toxins in the environment, like pesticides, chlorine in the water, those types of things. And that's the hardest concept, I think, to get across to people when we look at toxins, because I don't think they see them, Donna, and I don't think they really realize. I just actually was at the IHS with Dr. Smith, actually, weekend before last, or maybe it was last weekend, I don't remember. But Jeffrey Bland was speaking about that, and he was like saying, if people don't think they don't need to detoxify, they do, and it's more than just like, detoxifying by drinking a juice. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So the
That's my
point
next
being
book.
is, yeah, the point being is there's a ton of pesticides. Years ago, Donna, when I wrote Detox Strategy in 2000, I think in 8, and the Environmental Working Group said, they tested the urine and a saliva of Americans across the country, and everybody had 80 or 90 toxins floating around in their, bloodstream. And so I think that has a big impact on the microbial footprint. Also, I think people taking acid blocking medications, do you know how many people take those medications? A lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so those types of proton pump inhibitors disrupt the whole balance of gut flora. That's another huge problem. And stress, and most people don't realize, because serotonin is produced in the gut, that stress and being mindful and having some way of managing stress, whether it's through exercise, meditation, or whatever you want to do, is a big disruptor of gut flora.
And no, that's a big deal. It's more than obesity. It's also very much about gut brain and depression and mood, which we're looking at all the people that are on antidepressants, for example.
Right.
And so could you talk about that, the gut brain? Because you talk about that in the book, the gut brain connection.
Yes. I interviewed Dr. Imran Mayer, who is interestingly enough, a GI doctor and a neurologist. So he has both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, good for him.
And he's a scientist at UCLA. And and I'll give you an example. He took a group of women and divided them into 2 groups. In one group, he gave probiotics to 12 to 14 women, and the others placebo. And then he imaged their brain and did an MRI on their brain as he was showing them pictures that would create anxiety. And he found that the women who had the probiotic did not react to the pictures like the women who did not. Now, he's going to be one of the first, I guess you could say, pioneers to come forth. And he didn't even really want to study this. He was just approached by a yogurt company to do this. And he thought, well, what the heck, I'll do it. And then when he imaged the brain, he found out that the areas of the brain that produce depression and anxiety were not on fire in the women who had the probiotic. So we are now seeing, and I will tell you, I had one example of that, Donna, with one of the girls in my group, one of the ladies in my group. She's probably 57. And when she started, she lived on, and I don't even know what she was taking because I've never heard of this, but she bought some type of nausea medication from the pharmacy over the counter. And so she had nausea every night, and she was just not really that happy. But by the end of the third or fourth month of working with her, her mood, she actually started exercising and became outgoing and
Happy.
happy. And I saw firsthand that once, and when we looked at her balance of gut bacteria in her later testing, because remember I tested them every 6 weeks, we saw her coming back into balance, and then we saw tremendous changes in her mood. And she actually became happy. She went out, she was so funny. She said, Brenda, I went out and actually bought a bathing suit and took a picture of myself in it. I would have never done that before.
Mm.
So I think that we're going to see more studies about the gut brain connection. And then actually, I watched I was at IHS, and Dr. Perlmutter did a great presentation down there on the gut brain connection, and it was fantastic on showing animal studies where they had animals, mice actually, with disrupted bowel flora, how they didn't interact with each other. They kind of stayed separated in the cage and ran around. And then the ones that were balanced, how they nudged and loved each other. It was really an amazing video.
Wow. Well, yeah, now you've got in the book two different phases. There's the get lean phase and the stay lean phase. What's the difference between those two phases?
Well, there's adding more of the complex carbs back into the stay lean.
Now wait one second. Why would you add carbs? Because paleos are really hot, and they're into fat, and they're into no carbs and no dairy.
Some more, because in other words, what happens after they reach their goal weight, if they wanted to have let's say they wanted to have some hummus, or they wanted to have black beans, or they wanted to have some more of those complex carbs, then they're allowed start adding that back into their diet if they want to. Now, typically, I've stayed away from grains. As you well know, I'm not a grain person. So I don't advocate that even in the stay lean phase. But, I can't restrict. If people want to have some beans, Donna, and they're not totally bought into the paleo program, then that's what I suggested. And the way they do that is they just add it in the teaspoons of sugar, because I count carbs as sugar, into the teaspoons of sugar that they're adding into their day. So it's not totally a paleo type. I'm not totally paleo.
No. Well, I just think that's one of the mistakes that people, they just don't know that, if you're paleo, you can also get in trouble because you do need to have some complex carbs in your diet. The fiber and adrenals need them, but the gut bacteria especially need them to make the butyric acid and to have the fiber. On Body Ecology for years, I've been saying 80% plant-based, vegetables and so on. And then we have grain like seeds, quinoa and millet, not rice and wheat and flour products and all.
Exactly. That's
for fiber.
Yeah.
So can we talk just a second about the fiber, because fiber is very important for the little guys down there.
Yeah, and one of the things I did in order to get their fiber levels up was I had a class one night on doing blended green drinks. And so meaning that, and you said something earlier in the show that's very, very true. You can go into any health food store today and think you're buying a green juice drink that's had all the fiber taken out of it, and it's really sugar. So, everything in there isn't healthy. I wanted them to have green drinks or good juice drinks that had the fiber left in them. So I got everyone a blend tech because it was inexpensive and it was small and they could all use it. And so I had a class where I took, I said, here's the thing, you can put 5,000 carrots in here if you want to, or beets, which aren't bad, but you don't want an overabundance of them. They're heavy in sugar. So I taught them one of my favorite juices is, a cucumber with celery, handful of kale, handful of spinach, some parsley, because, it's a good diuretic, and then a third of a lemon, and then a half of a Granny Smith apple, which is a really good prebiotic. And so I taught them how to do blended green drinks or blended juices, whatever you want to call them,
Yeah, that's what we call them too.
without taking the fiber out of them. So that I taught them that so that they could boost that fiber content every day, because it's hard to get 25 to 35 grams of fiber. It's hard for me to get it in food. The other thing that I did with them is to make sure they had enough of the prebiotic is I did want them to take the soluble fiber every day, at least twice a day. And that we, of course, use the acacia fiber. And a couple of them didn't like it. I mean, like I said, I didn't have health food people here. But I found we actually developed one that we put a little bit of fruit fiber in it, not fruit juice, but fruit fiber, and they like that better. So anyway, I got the soluble fiber in them, which is the prebiotic, feeding the good bacteria to get their count up. So other than, and you're right, if you want to make sure that the diet is about 70 to 80% in live living fruits, vegetables, and then, some small amounts of protein, 2, 3, 4 ounces. Mm-hmm. And that's how I did it. And one of the ways I did getting the fiber up was, and you know what? The lady who actually was the junk food junkie loved the blended green drinks. She said, I'm doing those every morning for the rest of my life.
Oh, that's great. And do you feel like the support that you gave them was absolutely essential? I mean, can somebody buy the book and not have you for 6 weeks in a row?
Absolutely, because I learned so much from them, and I have so many tools in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Plus,
great recipes, yummy recipes.
We've got the website now where we're theskinnygutdiet.com, where we're interacting. Each of the people who were in the program with me will have their own page, and each person, Donna, was individual and had their own hang-ups. You know what I mean? Their own struggles, like menopausal. Whatever.
That's so perfect that you said that, because I've also been teaching the 7 principles, and one of them is the principle of uniqueness. There is not just one way for everybody, and of course you know that. And did they do colonics during that time?
I suggested that they do colonics. Some of them did, those that wanted to. Some of them couldn't confront that, but that was okay. But I will tell you one of the successes that I really, really feel good about. One of the gentlemen in the group weighed in at 285. That's a lot of weight, and he was about 6 foot tall, and he was determined. And I didn't know Donna until about 3 weeks of meeting with them. He said to me one night at the meeting, he said, Brenda, I've never had a normal bowel movement. And I went, what do you mean by that? He said, well, I've only had my adult life loose diarrhea. I said, really? So I was like really determined with him, because when I looked at his bacterial stool analysis, I thought, well, he does have a potentially pathogenic organism, but it's still in that, it's not over in that range yet. So I began to up his level of probiotics, and I added another scoop of fiber for him. And then the next week, Donna, he came to me. He said, I had a normal elimination for the first time in my life this week.
Wow. So the key, because constipation is huge. So the key is fiber, flora, bacteria, and that's where the flora baby comes in. Especially because actually bifidus, from everything I've researched, bifidus is a key bacteria for having a healthy bowel movement. So fiber, which you get from lots of vegetables, the flora baby and the good right balance of bacteria, but plenty of bifidus, and water, exercise. Would you say those are the key ones for having a bowel movement?
And let me just say something about exercise. Like, for example, I had two young girls that were in their early 30s, and they went to 4 spin classes a week, and both were 40 pounds overweight. Okay, so obviously something was wrong. And for those people who had exercise as part of their, it was part of their thing, you know what I mean? They had it worked into their lifestyle. I said, keep doing it. But for people who had never exercised until they got the diet under control, I didn't want them doing it. It's just too overwhelming to try to fit all that in there when they're changing their diet. So I said, you know what, wait until you feel like you've got the diet, you've lost a few pounds, you get a little bit more energy, then start doing some exercise. But I feel sometimes, Donna, like, people at the first of the year, they go on this, join the gym, change the diet, and it doesn't last.
Well, again, you could probably write a whole chapter in the book just on, and you probably haven't said it throughout the book in many ways, that if you go back to Dr. Imran Meyer's study at UCLA there, the gut bacteria guide the workings of our mind. So, some people don't even have the desire to get out and walk or exercise or do anything. I mean, even walking is fantastic for the body, getting you to go to the bathroom. Well, gosh, we're already out of time, and, you and I could talk forever on this subject. But I just want people to know that this is a very special book. There is a lot of, information out there on the gut, but this is practical information. This will change your life. And with the holidays coming up, it's a great gift book. But Brenda, tell about the PBS special, because I love it when you get on there and you talk about this is a great time to do this one. I think it's going to be your most popular one ever.
It starts the day after Thanksgiving on Friday. Like I said, you can go to your PBS, local PBS station, look up on the Finder and find out when it's called Skinny Gut Vibrant Health. It's not the Skinny Gut Diet. I actually put the diet piece on there from a little bit of pressure from my publisher. I wanted to put the Skinny Gut Life. I didn't want it to be a diet per se, Donna, but you know how it is. You kind of get a little pressure.
Yeah, they always put a diet book at the top of the New York Times bestseller list,
exactly.
Of course.
So it's Skinny Gut Vibrant Life. Look for it right after the Thanksgiving holiday, and I hope you enjoy it.
Well, I know that you will put a huge amount of work into it, and it's been years in the making, not just the writing of it and pulling it all together, but just the fact that there hasn't been a book, this kind of research. You had to wait for the research to be there to prove that the balance of the gut, the microbiome in the gut, is hugely contributing to the weight problem. And it's so connected. As people really study the gut, it's connected to everything. Healthy hormones. You can focus on the weight loss piece, but you'll become happier. You'll have better hormone balance. Mm-hmm. Everything works better when your gut works.
That's right.
Where health begins, is in the gut. So it's a great book, easy to read, delicious recipes. I love the recipes a lot, even the ice cream recipes in there. So please, everybody, check it out and consider it strongly as a gift for the holidays. I'd like to thank my guest. Brenda, thank you for being who you are and all the years of hard work, because I used to look at you 20 years ago and think, oh my God, you would go to every little health food store. If there were 6 or 16 people there you were beginning to teach them how to be healthy. And I knew sometimes you were tired. I remember one time when you and Stan packed up the 2 little dogs and got in the car, started a tour across the country, and I thought, wow, she really cares and is very hell-bent on giving people a healthy gut. And so you've been at it for a long time, so thank you very, very much for that, too.
And thank you, Donna, for all your work. I love you dearly, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you for listening, everyone, and for subscribing to Body Ecology Living with me, Donna Gates. Let's work together to make this a happier, healthier world.